Hello, I'm Marites Vitug, Editor-at-Large of Rappler. Welcome to Rappler Talk Investigative. Joining us is Roberto Cadiz, Human Rights Commissioner, a very outspoken human rights lawyer. Welcome to Rappler.
Thank
Shall
you
I
for
call
having
you
me.
Totsi? Yes.
Totsi, yeah, would be fine.
Well, we're going to talk about Duterte's withdrawal from the ICC. I'm not saying the Philippines withdrawal because you were saying earlier it needs a Senate concurrence to withdraw from the ICC. Is that correct?
Well, that's our opinion because if you needed Senate concurrence into ratifying or concurring with the treaty, then logically, using the same principle or policy, you would also need to engage the consent of the Senate to exit from the treaty. It's the only logical, rational interpretation.
When you issued the statement, CHR, did you get any response from the Senate? Because we have not heard, apparently, any senator.
Well, we referred to a Senate resolution expressing the sense of the Senate. That was, I think, issued in February 2017, saying that any decision to exit from the treaty would need the concurrence of the Senate.
So now that it's being processed, the Philippines needs a year before it's able to withdraw from the ICC.
Before the withdrawal becomes effective.
Okay, there is no, let's say after 1 year passes, will the ICC say, okay, the Philippines is no longer a member of ICC? Will there be an announcement, or we just take it for granted, we just count from March 17, right?
Yeah,
when the Philippines,
2018.
Yeah, 2018. And in March
2019.
2019, can we just assume that the Philippines is no longer part of the ICC?
Well, that is an issue that still has to be resolved because there are two schools of thought in that regard on that issue. Number one is, of course, the version of the administration saying that the president, being the architect of foreign policy, can unilaterally or on his own decide on the withdrawal by the mere notification of the UN Secretary General. But the other school of thought which we subscribe to is that the concurrence of the Senate will also be needed for the exit from the treaty to be effective.
So can the Commission on Human Rights file a case with the Philippine Supreme Court questioning the withdrawal from the ICC?
Well, hypothetically, yes. I don't see any law that would prevent the Commission from doing so.
So are you planning?
Well, we have not yet come to that point of deciding. But then there's that issue of, you should make a distinction between the ability or the capacity or the standing to file such a case, questioning the withdrawal, and the wisdom in doing that as a Commission on Human Rights. So the wisdom aspect that will need to be deliberated upon. But that having been said, there are many parties who can bring the case to the Supreme Court and raising the same issue. It does not need to be the Commission.
What is your position? Let's say if you were to discuss this among the commissioners, what would your position be? Should the Commission file, or should it just let other parties file a case with the Supreme Court? On the wisdom part.
My personal?
Yeah.
Okay, you're asking for my personal opinion. Well, first, if you are after resolving the issue, and since there are many interested parties who are willing to bring that issue to the Supreme Court, then I would say that the CHR need not be the party because the issue will be resolved anyway. But there's another bigger consideration insofar as I'm concerned, because I would rather leave that issue hanging so that later, because the fear is that the Supreme Court might decide in favor, I mean for human rights advocates, for those who believe that we should be a member of the ICC, there is a certain risk in bringing it to the Supreme Court now, given the political atmosphere. I don't even say legal, the political atmosphere where the Supreme Court is operating now. There's a big risk that the Supreme Court will say that the withdrawal does not need the consent of the Senate. And if that decision is made by the Supreme Court, then that will effectively make valid the withdrawal. I would rather leave the issue hanging so that later on we can say that we never withdrew in the first place, following the example of South Africa.
Yes, can you talk to us about that? Because let's say, I know that it takes maybe a long time for the case to prosper in the ICC. As you were saying, we're now into the preliminary examination, then there's a pre-trial, then it goes to trial. Let's say if a sitting president, if Duterte is convicted, it will be very difficult to enforce the judgment.
Yeah, because the ICC does not have an enforcement group that can execute, let's say, a warrant of arrest or a decision of the court. But the members of the ICC, all 123 members, are duty bound to follow the order or to execute the order. So hypothetically, and I emphasize the word hypothetically, if, for example, and I'm not only referring to Duterte,
but any sitting president.
Any sitting president or any member that has been subjected to the processes of the ICC. If they, for example, happen to be visiting a member state, that member state is actually duty bound to execute the warrant of arrest, bring that person to The Hague, and for him to service the sentence.
Has that happened? Are you aware of a case wherein that happened?
Yeah, but it was by the state itself. There was a change of administration, and that state now arrested the one who was supposed to undergo trial, brought him to the court. He underwent trial, and he was convicted, and he served his sentence. By the way, you cannot, the International Criminal Court does not conduct in absentia hearings. If you have not been arrested, or if you have not voluntarily surrendered or submitted yourself to the court to dispute the charges against you, then you're considered at large, and you will remain to be at that, what they call pre-trial stage.
I see.
The hearing will be suspended.
So even if it takes years,
yeah,
I mean, you're considered at large, there will be no trial.
Yeah, the ICC does not conduct in absentia hearings.
But you were saying earlier about the model, well, what happened to South Africa. Can you tell us why they, in the first place, they withdrew, and then the Supreme Court of South Africa said it was not valid? What happened?
Well, so there was a withdrawal by the executive. It was questioned by the opposition, the withdrawal, the political opposition. It went up to the Supreme Court, to the High Court of South Africa, and the High Court agreed with the opposition and ordered the executive to withdraw its withdrawal, thereby effectively making the state of South Africa to be still a member. Effectively, it said there was no withdrawal.
Oh, but does it have to take a Supreme Court decision? Should it happen within the year of the withdrawal of the country?
That's a gray area. If you ask me personally, I don't think so. It can be resolved, let's say, 2 years thereafter, 3 years thereafter. It's the domestic court. I mean, the local, the state, the member state can decide anytime. And I suppose, I imagine the stance of the ICC would be in favor of membership rather than not. It cannot say, no, 1 year has elapsed and we do not want you to be a member anymore and you have to go through the process again. I imagine that the stance of the member states would be to agree with the opinion of the domestic, of the municipal country, of the member state, to say that, yeah, we do agree with you that you were never withdrawn validly in the first place.
Were you surprised? Was the CHR, were you surprised when the president announced that he was going to unilaterally withdraw from the ICC?
No, we were not, because when the prosecutor sent a message to our government that they were closely monitoring the EJK situation in the Philippines, immediately thereafter, the president made a public statement saying that he was thinking of withdrawing the Philippines. So when it happened, it was no longer a surprise. And also he issued a statement one day after the Russia withdrew its signature from the Rome Statute. Although Russia never acceded, no?
Yes.
Kasi from signing, you need to ratify. Russia never reached that stage where it became a member of the ICC. So that's a difference between the state of Russia and the Philippines. We were actually a member.
And it was ratified by the
It was
Philippine
ratified
Senate.
by the Senate. Russia just withdrew its signature even before it became a member of the statute.
Also, it was never a member then.
Russia was never a member.
Okay.
Just like the US.
Yes.
The US never became a member because it never went through their Senate.
How does this affect your work, or is there any impact at all? Because you're very deep into, probing human rights violations, protecting human rights, especially in the drug war. How does the withdrawal or the planned withdrawal affect your work?
Well, number one, it strengthens the message of impunity on the part of the government. So it will make right now we're already having a hard time getting cooperation from the government in addressing these cases involving extrajudicial killings. With this stronger message of impunity, then I imagine our work will be more difficult. But we have already issued a statement on this to the effect that we will continue to fulfill our mandate as is expected of us under the Constitution, and also as a national human rights institution with mandates and with obligations proceeding from the Paris Agreement.
Are you able to get data or information you need from the Philippine National Police?
Actually, no. In the beginning, sometime last year, we had a meeting. All the commissioners visited PNP Chief De La Rosa in his office, and his staff and generals were there. And there was a very cordial meeting wherein he agreed to share the files of the PNP with the CHR. And in fact, there was supposed to be a follow-up meeting wherein these files would be shared with us. But when we followed up, we were informed that the president did not allow the PNP chief to proceed with the sharing. So we never. So all the files that we have are our own files submitted to us by complainants, by victims, and we're proceeding from our own files.
So, can you tell us, have you found any results, maybe patterns in your investigation, or maybe do you have hundreds of cases? Can the commission handle?
We have accepted around 1,100 cases. We have most of these cases we took on motu proprio, meaning they were not filed. 90% of these cases we said we should investigate. We have been able to resolve a little over 100 cases by way of recommending. Some were dismissed, some were for lack of evidence, etc., or withdrawn.
So the CHR filed this in local courts?
No, we recommended the file.
You recommended the filing
cases
okay.
to the DOJ, to the Office of the Ombudsman, etc. We have been able to resolve, I think, I have the figures. Let me see.
Yeah. You said you...
There. 317 resolved cases.
Out of the 1,100?
Yeah. 71 are pending resolution, meaning tapos na yung investigasyon, isusulat na lang yung resolution, but 718 are still pending investigation. And then of the 1,100 cases, 594 are police cases, and the other half are vigilante cases. But I must also point out that the CHR only has an average of two to four lawyers per region. We have like 8 to 10 investigators and one vehicle.
No, you mean one vehicle for the entire country?
No, per region.
Per region.
But how can you? It's really we do not. Our capacities are really stretched to the limit.
But have you also
Pattern.
asked the integrated bar? Don't you have an arrangement with them or agreement that they would help you?
Yes, but it's not yet been that solid. But we are being helped by NGOs, by lawyers groups in our investigations.
So when you say police cases, the killings were committed during police operations.
These are admitted by the police as their operations.
So 500.
594.
And then the rest
are
assumed
vigilante as per by default. Yes, if they're not police, then they're vigilante killings. Although, as you know, there's a gray area because there have been incidents where purported vigilante groups turn out to be PNP officers. If you're familiar with that incident in Mindoro, where the vigilante group, 2 policemen were wearing ordinary black jackets, but when they were about to be, arrested, they said, katropa kami. They took off their coats and they were actually wearing PNP uniforms. So are you sharing this data with the ICC during the preliminary examination? Right now, as far as I know, the ICC has not yet gotten in touch with us because they're not yet in that investigation stage. They're still in the preliminary examination stage. But if and when we reach that stage, assuming that this case is admitted by the ICC, we are duty-bound as a national human rights institution to cooperate with the ICC. But during the preliminary examination, should it be the prosecutor's office that will ask for information, or can you volunteer? We can actually volunteer. I mean, there is no law or there is no process that says you cannot send us information or data or analysis to the. But as of now, the office of the prosecutor has not communicated with us, but we are ready. But I think that's a significant finding you have within your 1,100 cases, because you have established that the police officers or policemen were involved in killings. Yeah, but there's a defense being put up by the PNP in general, by the government, that these are all non-laban cases. And since they're self-defense cases, there is no criminal liability. So that is a pattern, no? The putting up of that non-laban defense. So what do you expect then from this, let's say, cases that have been already recommended for filing? Are you hopeful that there will be? Well, so far, as far as I know, only one case has been filed. And this is the case that involved the killing of Kian de los Santos, involving 3 policemen. They're low-ranking police officers, and they're the only ones out of the. Well, if you go by the records of the CHR, more than 1,100. But if you even by police admission of almost 4,000 cases, and some would estimate extrajudicial killings to already be in above 10,000, filing one case against 3 police officers in all these years since June 2015 would tend to support the opinion that the justice system in the Philippines is not addressing the EJK cases, and would tend to support the position of the Office of the Prosecutor that they can assume jurisdiction over the case.
And even with the Supreme Court order to the Solicitor General to submit the data on the killings, it looks like there will be Solgen is not going to cooperate.
So it will bolster the position of the prosecutor of the ICC that they can take jurisdiction over the case. But that is assuming that one other condition is met, which is that the allegations of extrajudicial killings fall within the ambit of crimes against humanity. Because
so that's still debatable?
Yeah, and I think that is one of the things that's being examined now, looked into by the Office of the Prosecutor before they admit the case. Number one, if our courts are able to address the extrajudicial killings, and number two, if the extrajudicial killings themselves constitute crimes against humanity, because under the old conception of crimes against humanity is that traditional conception under international humanitarian law, which is in the context of war. Now is the drug war, within the context of war, that is the old concept of under international humanitarian law. So these are of course there are two sides to this argument, but that will also have to be determined.
Are you familiar, or is there any other case similar to this filed in the ICC, which has to do with violence caused by
anti-criminality?
Yes. No.
I've not come across actually, but a criminality campaign falling under IHL, I might be wrong, but I must add also that the concept of crimes against humanity is also an expanding concept. It is not a static concept, no? Just like the concept of human rights. Before, when you spoke of human rights, you were only talking of civil and political rights. But it has expanded through time. Now it involves economic, social, cultural rights. And that might also be, the trend in regard to international humanitarian law.
That's very
and
interesting.
Crimes against humanity.
Yes, because I assumed, that it's a crime against humanity because of the number
That's right.
Just merely the number of people killed. But have you seen any changes when the PIDEA took over led the drug war rather than the PNP?
Actually, there's a palpable change.
Which is?
And we must, take our hats off to PIDEA specifically, and even to the government in general, because when PIDEA took over the fight against drugs, there was a palpable decrease in extrajudicial killings. And the messages being sent by the chief of PIDEA are the correct messages. It seems to be more respectful of human rights. Their people seem to be better trained compared to the PNP, which the messages coming from PNP, which we would say is actually acoustic messages, no? Kunyari, pakitang tao. Pero yung PIDEA, we would wish to encourage PIDEA to be that balancing force within the government, within the police sector, the security sector, the balancing force, at sana mag-grab off yung kanilang culture of being more respectful to human rights. And specifically, we would like to congratulate and encourage Aaron Aquino, who is the head of PIDEA.
So, si Aaron Aquino takes the lead, di ba? So, PNP has to defer to the decisions of PIDEA.
Dapat ganon. Under the law, PIDEA is really the chief agency that should address the problem, the drug problem.
So, ano bang numbers ngayon? Kasi up to now, government says 3,000 plus in police operations. Human rights advocates say 10,000, 12,000. What numbers do you use?
Actually, nahilo na kami kasi sa simula, ang bilis yung numbers, we were questioning. Parang people were saying, were believing the figures. I personally would say, parang ang bilis yatang pumatay ng gobyerno. Parang kino-compute ko yung monthly average, hindi naman siguro ganito kagaling pumatay itong mga to. Even I was in disbelief. But later on, when the people were speaking against extrajudicial killings, especially the international community, the European Union, biglang bumaba yung figure ng PNP. Biglang nasa 2,000, pakonti-konting tumaas. So even the figures coming from the government have been confusing. We don't know actually the real figures, but it's definitely high. I mean, even if you look at the minimum of below 4,000, not 3,000 plus, that's still very, very high, considering that this only started in June 2015. 2016. Yeah, June, when was the president?
You forgot. 2016.
2016,
yeah,
sorry.
So
that's right.
It's been 2 years.
2 years, and you already have a...
Correct. And you were saying, 3,000. But under the leadership of PIDEA, yung frequency ng reports of killings.
There was a time when nag-exit yung PNP. PIDEA lang. 2 lang yung extrajudicial killings.
2 lang.
There was a dramatic, steep decline. But now the PNP is engaged again. Yes. But you know, ostensibly under the command of the PIDEA. Medyo nabawasan na. Pero we would personally, I would say there might be 2 factors here. Number 1, it's because PIDEA is taking the lead. Number 2, dahil siguro may threat yung yung International Criminal Court.
Okay.
Because really the way of the rational way for the government to respond to the threat of the ICC filing a case against the president is really to not with propaganda, not with, you know, putting up these puny questions regarding jurisdiction such as non-publication in the official gazette.
But that's a very silly argument.
Yeah, but really to address the issue of impunity, because that's really the heart of the matter. That's what the ICC wants to address. And you know, if you follow the example, for example, of Kenya, where its former president Uhuru Kenyatta was charged, and it reached all the way to the trial chamber. No, it went through preliminary examination. It went through investigation, pre-trial chamber. Eventually, the prosecutor withdrew the charges.
In that late stage?
In that late stage, saying that it lacked evidence.
So what
that to me is unusual, but it happened. That can happen to the president now.
So it's not even sure once you reach the trial stage that it will lead to conviction?
It's not, because there have actually many acquittals also. But in the case of Kenyatta, the prosecutor withdrew the case while it was already in the trial chamber. And so the trial court had no other choice but to, you know, but to grant the dismissal. And the ground cited was lack of evidence. But if it lacked evidence, how come it went past through the pre-trial chamber, which is supposed to be very strict in evaluating?
So what's your theory? Why did that happen?
I don't know. It's hard to speculate. Maybe Raul Pangalangan can answer that better. But my theory is that these issues, given there is also a political angle to this. My theory, it's possible that it was no longer, there was no longer impunity happening within Kenya under the new leadership of Kenya. And also there's political reality, because I take note that the succession of leadership in Kenya are also Kenyatas. parang kamag-anak yata ni Uhuru Kenyatta yung na-charge sa ano. I don't know really, but they withdrew. So theoretically, it's a possibility. As long as we show that we are no longer committing extrajudicial killings, that we are addressing the issue of impunity, etc. And then maybe the International Criminal Court can go looking for other cases that they elsewhere that's more urgent.
That's right.
You know? But now it is very urgent. That's why they're hot on our heels. So I think that's the rational response, not propaganda, not you know, non-publication sa ano or
yeah, we hope
insulting the prosecutor or even the High Commissioner on Human Rights,
yeah,
or even the Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Killings.
And the President luckily has not focused his attention on you.
On me or on the CHR?
On the CHR, yes, he has, but on specific commissioners, no? Except, of course, your chairman. He was
our chairman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he has kept.
Unfortunately for him.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but as long as we are able to show that we are objective, there's nothing personal, we're just fulfilling our mandate. We actually respect the office of the President, but it is our duty to call out the President if there are violations. Then we hope that the President understands where we're coming from. We do wish the President all, you know, the best in running this government. But at the same time, we cannot tolerate, especially innocent people being killed by the wayside. They're already, and especially children.
Okay, on that note of great hope, and also on that note of great concern, we'd like to thank you, Commissioner Roberto Cadiz, for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for listening, and let's all wish the Commissioner on Human Rights good luck.
Thank you.